Hello, welcome everyone to SHOWstudio. It's London Fashion Week, and instead of reviewing one particular show this season, we're going to be talking about brand building through visual storytelling beyond design. I have a group of visionaries with me who will help me unpack their creative process in visual storytelling. And thank you everyone for joining us live in the studio. We're gonna have time at the end for some audience questions, so make sure you think of some good ones. Today, the pressure of maximizing sales and visibility for any brand is at an all-time high, leading to a real reduction in risk-taking when it comes to fashion imagery. Campaigns and lookbooks from brands all over the world are really starting to homogenize into sans serif fonts, blank backdrops, and the same handful of photographers rotating in their own game of musical chairs. Our guests today are obviously rejecting this trend and producing bold, boundary-pushing storytelling that prioritizes artistry and are reaching their own global audience with visual world building. While they need no introduction in SHOWstudio tradition, I'm gonna let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm one half of the brand Knowles.
I'm Charlotte. I'm the other half of Knowles.
I'm Charles, and I'm creative director of my brand Loverboy.
I'm Alva Claire, and I'm a model.
I want to start with the question, what makes a good fashion image? Charles?
I'll go. I think a good fashion image is one that kind of carries a story, one that you kind of like sink into and want to kind of understand more about. I think it's kind of difficult to understand that now in a day and age that we live in, because we're just constantly sort of like flicking through different images, and I think it's quite rare for us to even stay with an image for longer than like 4 or 5 seconds. So I think, you know, back to when I first started buying fashion magazines and like thinking about like the editorials that I loved that were kind of like, you know, seeing fashion in a really kind of theatrical and almost like grotesque way, like thinking about like Panos Jopannis' styling, or like Stephen Meisel's photos for Arena Hom, you know, or Nick Knight's photo. You know, just where you sort of like sit with something and you want to like either draw it or you want to like understand and look at every single part of it. So I think for me, that's what a good fashion image is.
It's quite hard to put into words. It's just like something that captures you, like captures your attention. And I guess it is just about collaboration and bringing minds together to create something that's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the fashion photo of the past and the fashion photo of today has probably a different goal or a different way of like capturing people. So I, you know, think probably things that were really great in the 90s or the 70s maybe doesn't have the same resonance like today, when you are fighting for attention against like so many people on Instagram, TikTok, you know. I'm pretty sure they didn't have like a whole crew of people filming the backstage of like every shoot back then, you know, and they didn't think about things in the same way. So I think there's definitely, you know, like you said, an homogenization of what is happening. But I think on the other side, because there is so much, and there's so much homogenization of things, I think there's also like people ready to like push things in like a different direction and kind of try to see what they can achieve with photography, or like, you know, creating images that maybe resonates with the past but has like a vision in the future, or like kind of take something that they understand from the past but make it in a way that like a new audience can understand it.
Also being like confident enough to sort of establish an identity and aesthetic. I feel like that's quite a challenge in these days, because like you just see so much every single day, and like you're absorbing other people's work, and like that can sort of, I don't know, influence you in a way. So I think it's about having a very strong aesthetic and being quite consistent with like creating imagery.
How long you stay with an image. It makes me think, when you talk about magazines, how I would collect and like revisit images. And it would be in the back of my mind, and I would like think about something for a long period of time, revisit it, then pack it away, then go back again. And I feel like it's so hard because everything is so fast now. And what you were saying, we're being fed so much all the time. It's like, how can you sit with an image for long enough to, I suppose, really get into the world that's been made for you to receive? And that's something that I think is becoming harder and harder.
I often wonder if like there's kids that like have like nowadays, like they have like their favorite like cover photo of a magazine.
I just don't think that's the thing.
It's like in the saved bit.
Yeah, it's in the saved bit. Like I kind of feel like it's like, oh, I love this and I love this. Like I remember, like Arena Home Plus, there's a photo. I mean, it's because it was quite a sexy photo, but like Andres Segura, this model, is like Kylie Minogue's like ex, but he, it's just like such a powerful photo of him. And you know, and also like the Vivienne Westwood book where she's kind of like that. I think that's like
I have that book,
David Sims image.
Yeah.
But then in that book, there was all of these other photos that were in there that I just used to want to sit and draw, and I think that's what I remember.
That's
like,
what I would do as well.
Yeah, you
like
would just
images,
sit and try and draw it.
fashion images I was like obsessed with, I would just have to draw them.
Yeah.
Like, but I feel like I wonder if people do that now. Like,
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You know, I think, I teach at St. Martin's from time to time, and even just like how they sort of communicate their images. Like I get really frustrated when they just like print out images and it's still got like the white border around it. And I'm like, you've not done anything to claim it. Because that's the thing, I think it's about like how you as a human being sort of like reclaim that image either with your hands or, you know, where you kind of like place it or if you frame it or do something. Because images are objects, you know, like they're kind of regurgitations from other human beings or, you know, now machines. But I think it's kind of the tool that we use to consume it, which has changed, and I think that's kind of, it's a great thing, but it also has lots of bad sides to it as well. So,
as creative directors of your own brands, what is the purpose for you of a campaign or of that aspect of visual storytelling?
I feel like it's the distillation of that collection, and like I don't know, we love doing campaigns because it's nice to have like a memento, something that's sort of like trapped in time that you can go back to, and it's like, I don't know, like I love looking back at the shoots that we've done. I'm so glad that we did them because it feels different to we love doing shows and it's amazing and it's such a energetic, like amazing thing to do a show, but like to have images that are just so like, I don't know, perfect as an image, like so satisfying and so kind of...
I guess it's because shows have like a lot of physical limitation, especially as a young brand. You know, you don't have the capital to do exactly what you want to do with a show. Whilst with the photography, you can really break kind of that barrier with reality. You can really do whatever you want and how you really imagine the collection. So
yeah, it's the sense of control as well. Like as you're making the images, you can kind of be so precise, which is like really nice because you're just with a show like. Everything goes out the window sometimes, and like you just have to pray that it looks good in the photos, like that something hasn't fallen off or someone's fallen over or
you
whatever.
always like obsess about the thing because only you will know. Like, that dress is the wrong way around.
Strap is like twisted, or like you know, but like with you know, it's really nice doing images where it's really like you can obsess over like everything.
And it's the art direction for your image. Like one thing, whenever you guys like drop a campaign, like I'm always like showing people in my team, it's like so good. Like just the art direction, like the placement of the logo. Like I think art direction is also such an important part within campaigns. You know, like my brand is quite different in terms of how we do campaigns. I don't think I've ever really done one that's kind of like in the same way that you've done it, where it's like a kind of echo of the show. It's very much sort of for sales. The images that are on the screen now are different. This was a project we did with Tim Walker where I photographed my Spring Summer 21 collection. They all blur into one. So that's slightly different, but then that was such a big shoot on its own, then it kind of was a campaign as well. But the kind of campaigns that we do now are very much like sales focused, so we'll do an edit that we know is either on our e-commerce or is the key images on the market. That's why the key pieces that are on the market. So, you know, you can't really, it's what you were saying, you kind of have to almost like make it as direct as possible, and it's because it's so people can buy it. You know, like, like at the very beginning when I was doing my website, like I would have the e-commerce models like with loads of crazy makeup on, and the casting was like very similar to the show. And then we realized that like if we slowly started to sort of like just make it a little bit calmer or whatever, the sales were going up. So that's the kind of, I mean, that's just the role that any designer plays as they grow their business for a period of time. You have to tussle between commerce and making things a bit more available, opening up your aesthetic. So it's kind of like where you want to choose to do the other elements to kind of.
That is literally the biggest challenge.
Yes. Do you worry that kind of loses the ethos or the heart of why you went into it in the first place? The compromise.
I think so. I don't think there's a wrong or right way of doing it. I think everybody has their own personal journey with it. Like for me, you know, like currently if you look at the Instagram, like you wouldn't think, like there's some things that are more kind of like editorial and then there's other things that are just product. I mean, this is the reason why my brand is like, successful. It's like, we have like very clear product, like this ears. I would never believed that like that hat would be the thing that like makes me all of my money, like, considering who I am and the stuff that I like.
I see people wearing them everywhere.
It's mental. I mean, I'm
it's crazy.
so grateful, like I'm really, really grateful. But it's like, it's a very different world in which I live in. My early shows, like the projects that I did with Nick in SHOWstudio, that's a very different, I mean, there's still a personality that's in there, but, it's just, I have to make money, So when we do like the show in Paris, however, if you see that grouping of images in the middle, that's different. That's like my opportunity to kind of like tap back into like my world. So you just have to find a mixture between the two, and I think doing shows, there I am, shows is an opportunity to kind of.
But I think it's even more skillful to be able to. It's not even compromising. It's being able to like, and I think it comes with experience where you're able to take your aesthetic in terms of like fantasy and bring it into like the real world and make people that just wants to go by their daily lives fantasize a bit by buying your clothes, and if you're able to distill the kind of fantasy, like I said, into something that still is able to be identified as yours but is more digestible for people, I think that's a skill.
And that people can have a piece of the world that is to you, it's the whole world. But for some people, it's like their limit of like the hat means probably so much to so many people because they are part of the world, even if they're wearing it with nothing else that's your brand. It's like that translates, and then it keeps going.
Like for me, I love Vivienne Westwood so much, and I remember my mum got me her perfume, and I've still got the perfume bottle. I couldn't afford a Vivienne Westwood piece for a long time, and I just had the perfume bottle. But then for me, it was like I feel like
symbolism.
So connected to like that person who's my hero. So I think it's good that like if you can find something that people
it like allows you to connect with more people basically, and I feel like. Like Alex says, it's not really a compromise, it's just like a challenge, I think, which is kind of like, as a designer, quite nice in a way, to like try to challenge yourself to diffuse your like wildest idea into something that is like a sweatsuit or like a t-shirt, to try and,
I mean, we've been trained in college to do the complete opposite of that.
That's what I mean.
Like
it's
yesterday,
so hard.
I was like with students, and I was just telling them to like completely like push it into the whole other direction. You need to have the narrative. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what is the core reason as to why you're like attracted to these things? Half of them were just like, I have no idea, and I'm like, but that's fine. But then we need to just explore that. Like, I think it's just so important for you to understand to play. But obviously we're getting into that, and then on the opposite end, it's like,
in the end, it needs to be a t-shirt.
You need to be need a t-shirt, need something that's like under like 200 quid. But
I want to talk about the creative process behind
of course.
image making. But first, I want to ask Alva, because you bring a very different perspective as a model. How do you see your role in bringing a brand's world to life?
I realize how important it is, and it almost feels like a collection of many different scenes in many different films, like a crash course of doing this immediately. You arrive on set and you're embodying a character and sometimes a collection, and you need to bring it to life and show respect to people who've been working on this for such a long time. And you can often see in people's faces watching it come to life on set. And I feel like it's how quickly you have to become this character. And that's why I mentioned scenes, because it often feels like you're doing scenes of a film super fast and with no time to learn any lines, but you just have to jump straight in. But I think connection, for me, being able to connect with the photographer, the team, but also what I'm wearing, and sometimes if I'm not wearing anything, what am I wearing, if you know what I mean? And that's something that over time I've learned and really started to enjoy it, because it's so important. It almost feels like we're sometimes the final piece of the puzzle, although I'm sure there other people would say that, no, we are the final piece that you...
No, I think there's something so amazing about when you do casting for your show and then you finally see the garments on the right model.
Yes.
Like, that's when your emotions just go, because it's just like, okay, like just doing the thing, doing the thing, and then it's that release.
It's kind of like a thrill, like when you see it on the right person, you're like, done. Okay, cool.
It must feel so amazing to do that for some designers.
It does, and it's quite emotional when you build these relationships that so quickly you become connected through this image or through a show, and you see the emotions and you feel it, and sometimes it feels like you leave with everything. It feels quite heavy, but in like a wonderful way, because you know how important it is. And I just hope that like models that are starting out realize that, you know, we are the key to kind of bringing everything to life. And this story, you can really connect with the narrative. And it has been hard, the way imagery has changed, because I really love shooting with and creating a story, a narrative, and be able to become somebody else. But you can still do that with like minimal makeup and like a white background. You can still do that, but I think it's harder. You have to tap in. So often at the beginning of a day, I'll like ask someone, you know, what is the story? Who is this person that I'm creating today? And that really helps. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So as creative directors, what's that process like, picking who's going to be the face of your campaign?
I think,
and that connection you build with the model.
I think it's totally instinct. I mean, it's just like human connection, you know. I think for me, I always really like to get on with the person, you know. And I mean, when I first started, it was just my friends that I was putting down the runway. But then obviously, like working with people like Maddie, Madeleine Osley, who was my casting director for a long time, you know, it was very much about how she delivered the people to me. And she's a brilliant casting director. She would just kind of like, you know, really kind of big people up and say that this person comes from this place and this is what they do, and then they're so sweet. And then like a lot of the people that we'd have would just be street cast and it'd be their first show, which I loved because it just meant that we could kind of like nurture them and like kind of help them and stuff. And it was kind of part of that Loverboy ethos of just like building people up.
Community.
So yeah, and it was so nice, that kind of relationship that we would build in that room where we would style and build things together. And like, yeah, you know, I've watched all of the shows with Galliano, McQueen being like, go do this, da da da, and you kind of, you're like, okay, this is my time to have my version of it, you know. And then you kind of feel yourself like kind of giving prompts, and then you're like, no, can't here, and you're just like, and it's just fun. I mean, I love that process because it's just, for me, it's just like such a fun time, you know. I've done shows where they're a bit more like angry and serious, like my show Tantrum, but most of the time it's just about us having, like, just trying to get the best out of somebody and seeing what connects, you know. So that's mine.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, we kind of were straight out of uni. So we were quite lucky that our stylist, Georgia, kind of started working with us quite early on. Because, like, I remember our first few shows, we were just, you know, we had, like, a vision of what we wanted the women to be. We had, like, this story in our head. But, you know, obviously the agencies were not sending their best models. They were sending kind of like really new people, so a lot of them were really shy. They were very like, you know, and we were like, you know, the Knowles woman is so much like so much power and so confident in everything, and we were kind of like a bit confused of what we were doing. And then obviously we started working with Georgia, and Georgia was like, no, this is a Knowles woman, this is how she is. And you know, she really helped us kind of form our understanding as well of casting and like how we need to think about it. And obviously now it's so much more about personality, and that's why, you know, like Alva's doing so well as well, because like she said, it's about embodying something. But I think these days as well with casting is also the person behind it, because if you want people to connect with someone, I feel like there needs to be kind of like a personality behind the thing, and you can really feel it, even if it's
like
through images, you know?
An inner kind of strength and confidence, and I feel like Alva has that in like abundance. She just like sells it, and you can just feel that she's like in control. And I feel like
versatile as well. Like you're giving like gothic diva here, and then you're giving like glam.
So
It's like so cool.
It's the
she's always so calm and like, I don't know, you're just
backstage. It's always hectic, no matter what show you're doing, and it's always stressful, and everyone is at their like. It is like a birth. It's like watching a birth.
You're literally like the calmest energy. I'm always like, where's Alva?
But it's with you guys. I feel like it's also with the direction that you receive. It's so exciting to then really, as soon as you step out, you know that you're being faced with all of these eyes, and you just think, how am I going to? The direction for this show that we did was like so incredible, because we were angry and it felt like you were firing us up before we went out, and that is important. And I think, like you were saying before, a lot of girls, maybe it was their first show, this one, and the girl in front of me, it was her first show, and I was just like, but the feeling afterwards, because of how they've been kind of instructed to move, but also a character. And that's really like narrative and story and character is something that we have to keep coming back to, because that's how we build.
Is it similar when you translate from a runway show to a campaign or a lookbook?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more things that goes into it, obviously, because you're kind of putting a whole thing around one person or two people, or, you know, we've done some with more people, but like, you have to really think about precisely what's the story, even more precisely, and like, who's going to be able to embody it. And obviously, sometimes there's constraint because the person's on the other side of the ocean, and you're like, I don't have the money to fly that person over on like business class, so let's figure out what else we can do. So there's a lot of back and forth, and then obviously when you have like an extended creative team, everyone has a different opinion, and then, you know, our stylist has a very strong opinion on things, and, you know, Jamie as well. So sometimes it's about kind of like figuring it out in a more kind of...
That's the kind of beauty of it, isn't it? It's bringing all these people together and creating something that you couldn't have even really like just imagined on your own. It's like...
I think that's the thing, like a campaign is a very community-based thing as well. It's like the cultural capital of all of the collaborators that you bring together. Like
you
the
as a creative of everyone.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like that's you as a creative director. You know, it's your role as to kind of think, okay, who's the best art director to bring into this? Who's the best stylist? Who's the best photographer to then embody that? And then the model. You know, like I think that's why I think for me, the traditional version of a campaign I've not necessarily like done yet. It's like always been kind of, you know, something that's happened in another project that's orbited the runway show or something else. But I think, you know, I mean, I've done some consultancy stuff before, and it's sort of been like, okay, well, if we were to have like this amount of money, this would be the person that I would bring in. I would work with this art director, and I'd work with this celebrity, and this would be the kind of rollout and stuff. And I think I mean, that's me after a while of doing this, you kind of know how it goes. But I think with you guys, it's a really great thing to watch, like just seeing the strength of like all of those very traditional fashion elements coming together that have been, you know, usually in publishing, but it works so well for Instagram, you know, like those campaign photos that you guys do is just so strong. I think for me, it's like more around, I guess, all of that happens in the show. It's like the performative element of it, you know, like I was really lucky to have Beth kind of close the show. That was a complete accident. She just literally
amazing.
she just like turned off. she just did it. So I'm just like, okay, well, that's just like my way of doing things. But with Tim, I mean, that project that we did, I mean, Tim's a really good friend of mine, and you know, I've styled photo shoots that he's done before. But I plucked up the courage to ask him to shoot my campaign, and then, you know, working with him was really interesting because I gave him like 60 looks to do. and the nice thing, because it wasn't like traditionally just about like kind of like the fashion, it was also about creating the images as well. So we had some abstract images that were of a plus size model, which we kind of painted to look like this artist's work. Howard Scatz and you know, Lucy Bridge did such an amazing job. There was like a whole beauty story that was within it. We also had like a lot of looks that were kind of like degrading into you know, like undress, and it was all, I mean, it was during COVID, so the inspiration was about animals that sort of are really colourful to ward off, you know, say that you're poisonous, because we're all kind of like get back, and this idea of attraction and everything. But I say all that to say that, you know, a brand can do things in different ways, you know, but I think it's really interesting to see a brand like yours like work in that like traditional way, because it's still so powerful, you know. I think not a lot of people do it that are in our level, you know.
I think it's like a different result as well. I mean, not like, I don't think it's like, it's not the best performing things on Instagram, I must say. It's not the best things for social media. I think it's definitely kind of playing the long game. Like, we should probably be doing a lot more of the commercial, like, understanding, and like, you know, because that has so much value when you're trying to grow your brand. We kind of just, we're lucky enough to like, we're lucky enough to work with people that wanted to work with us, even though we didn't necessarily have the money when we started, or like we kind of, you know, they wanted to wear the clothes, so we were able to do trades and things like that and make a lot of, you know, kind of high level shoots happen. But in the end, for us, it's kind of like more storytelling for the long game, because obviously if someone afterwards that never discovered you goes back through everything that you've done, they're able to like understand your world in like, you know, bits through the like image campaigns. And for us, this is what's important. You know, we discussed that a lot with Georgia, our stylist, about like, is there actual value in doing those campaigns and like spending all that money and like making those things happen? And obviously when you have like, you know, Julia Fox in it, it makes much
travels a
more.
lot, yeah.
But it's that weird thing where we live in this day and age where like everything is quantified, like
Yeah.
and we think, and then so we hold that as the value of the image. But
That's the
like
thing,
back in the day, if you released that campaign and it was in like the face, you know, like before Instagram, like you know, it was be for the internal fashion crowd. 'Cause it was a lot more, you know, like fashion is such a popular thing now, but whereas it was kind of like just an inner circle. And so all of the things that you're doing is stimulating the people like me that are like get it and understand, and we're like, and I'm like,
I feel like
do you know what I mean? It's like,
it is almost for like the insiders. Like in a way, it's like an expression of like bringing all of your people together and showing them. I don't know. It feels
We also like we always talk about like how brands now or like maybe forever, the product is not really what you're trying to like sell. What you're trying to do is bring value to a name, and you're trying to build that value in the name of the brand, because whatever happens, that if you're able to like become a really big brand name, then you're able to do so much more, you know? So it's kind of like you're doing all these things to kind of impress your peers at school, so you become the popular kid at school. So afterwards you can ask for favor, you can do like things, you know, it's a bit like high school, the industry, isn't it?
I feel like you're the kids that like are smoking at the back behind the bike sheds, and I'm like the class clown. Like, that's how I sort of see it.
When you do approach the visual side of it, what makes a good creative relationship with the photographer?
I mean, you've got to be able to have a laugh. For me, you have to have a laugh with them. I mean, I have to be able to be myself and with the team. I've worked with photographers before. I mean, I used to do a lot of styling with different publications, and that was so amazing to be able to work with like some really great photographers. But there's been one or two who I've been like, oh my God, this is like so difficult. You know, like 'cause my styling is quite messy, and that's like my language. You know, it's always been like that. And I've worked with photographers who are incredibly exacting, and like they've booked me knowing what my portfolio is like, and then yet still being like, oh, can you just neaten that and you link this, and then it's like you kind of find
like a bit tense.
Yeah, it just becomes really tense, and then you start to resent the photographer, and then you're just like, I just don't know how to finish this day, you know. But
of like delicate kind of personalities in one room working towards the same goal. I think a lot of it is like being able to have a laugh, but I suppose also it's trust.
Trust is so important.
Trust. It's so important to be able to kind of, without saying anything, trust that the vision is, we're all in agreement here, but it happens without speaking sometimes. And that, when you hit that moment with a creative team where they can communicate in that way, it's so special, because it's like, there doesn't need to be that tense feeling, because everyone's trusting what's happening. And allowing decisions to be made that sometimes someone might not have agreed with at the beginning of the day, but then halfway through it's like, no, that does make sense.
Yeah, because I guess like when we get to the actual shoot, usually basically everything has been like communicated, you know, between like our stylist, photographer, art direction, and like everything has kind of been agreed in terms of what it's going to be. So usually when we get to set, we just kind of let the team deal with it, and we'll just interject if there's something that we're just not really agreeing with. I feel like usually it's a lot of trust. I mean, we kind of worked with just a lot of our friends, so we're kind of just lucky in that way. You know, it's rare that we've done a shoot where we were like, what the hell is that person doing? You know, we kind of just worked with Thomas for most of it, and like, you know, Claire now, and like...
There is so much magic in something taking a completely different direction on set. I've been part of so many shoots where something changes, whether it's like location, on the day, like the location completely changes, and there is a lot of magic in that, because sometimes those are the best.
Or like spontaneous,
There's that energy transferal from an image, I find. You know, it's the same as painting. You'll see a painting that has like certain kind of, like, you feel the energy of the brush strokes and everything, and that human soul that's like traveled through it. The same thing happens with an image. You know, like, I mean, I worked a lot with Katie with Love magazine, and like, you know, she really likes to create an atmosphere. She likes to have the music blasting.
Really important.
Super important. And like sometimes she'll just like get a bucket of water and throw it at the model, and then it's like, you know, but then it's just, you get that energy, you get that light, you know, it's
and
a different
kind of... You get that energy from the talent of the model as well. Like, I love when photographers are like screaming on set, being like, yes!
Oh my God,
You really feel like the model is like, I feel amazing, and like, you know, they're going to give their best because they feel really good about themselves, and I feel like that's great when you get a photographer like Elizaveta. She's like, yes,
she expresses so much. I love
so excited, and it's like fun for us to watch her get so excited about it. Like, you know, it's just, I think she's really enjoyable.
One of the most exciting photographers right now, and I just worked with her recently, and it was such an incredible experience because it was like water, wind, music, screaming, mirrors, and it was like you just feel like you're embodied in this. It was so unusual. I realized how little I get to shoot like that. And yeah, she's screaming and she's passionate, and you feel, and sometimes she gets angry, and then it's like, and everything. It just feels, but it's amazing.
Powers.
Yeah. So many things. No. It's incredible.
She's like the sweetest nutcase.
Yeah.
Isn't she?
Fabulous.
Whose role is it to bring that energy on set?
I do feel like it's like mostly the photographer for
now
me.
then.
I don't know.
I think it's
I'm quite quiet on
Unless you have a life hat, you
and talent. I think.
it's usually Charles.
Well, so the team that I tend to work with for the shoots that we do for just like, so we'll do like a bunch of trade assets before we do the show. So we shoot everything for e-com, really clean, like just product, everything's like tucked in properly. And so they just see the trousers, and then we'll do sort of like newsletter photos, which are kind of a little bit of a step above that, and then we'll do like the kind of, technically it's the campaign, but it's just like all of the sales items. And we like to just work with a similar team. Like one of my best friends, Alex Petra, I've worked with for years. He's very much like a commercial photographer. So with that, like, you know, I think, because I used to work with him when I was a student at St. Martin's. I did my styling project with him, and then I think I kind of adopted that role of getting with the models and just being like, right, come on, we're going to do this. You're going to do the haka. You're not going to like scream like this. And it's like, I don't know, it's my personality, but
You're good at
if
it.
I'm not in the room and then it's just them for a bit, I get a text from my head of ops, Diane, being like, can you come back? It's gone a bit stale. And I'm like, right, and just like bring it in. But I think it just depends. Like, I think with my work, specifically for Loverboy, you know, it needs to always have that element of joy or some sort of form of like extreme emotion throughout it. You know, I think that's just kind of the brand that it is. So with that, you know, it's always about kind of making sure there's like an arc and there's a poignancy and there's like a strength and everything else, which is kind of sometimes easier. I mean, the photographer that I was mentioning, I won't mention the name, but the one that was very exacting, like their kind of portfolio was like very, very different to like me. So I think it was interesting to bring us together, but I think, you know, and there's something in the tension, like, you know, if you feel the tension in an image, you know, that's also something
incredible.
You know.
Yeah, I guess for us, I mean, it's either we have like a really good, you know, movement director that will do what Charles. Basically, Charles is stylist, movement director, cheerleader, designer, creative director. But usually we'll have like either a movement director or it's going to be the
Also
photographer.
Georgia.
And Georgia's also
Georgia.
really good.
Always
you know.
hyping up the girls, like helping them posing and, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But
Getting them into character.
You know, most of the photographers that have like images that embodies that usually will be that as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think the photography that photographers do will be reflected in their personality most of the time. You know, like Jordan will just put kind of crazy Spanish metal techno, and he's gonna be like, yes, you know, and then Arsenault is just like super French and is gonna be like screaming all the time and panicking because he can't get the photos. He's like chain smoking and coming back in, you know. So I think everyone has their like little personalities, and if you choose someone for their work and you're excited by it, usually they have a personality that reflects that.
So good.
It's
like
amazing.
the art
Yeah,
direction,
Jordan's so
the
good.
way the font is, everything.
It's so good.
Such a
Jordan.
Before we round up, does anyone have any questions in the audience for our panelists?
quick.
I feel like we didn't talk about anything.
When, just going back to the very first question about the image and what makes great image, I think all of you kind of alluded to an allure, an inherent allure, whether it comes from the details or like quiet confidence or an elegance. And so I just wondered at the very start, like when you're planning a show or a campaign or a shoot, how you find allure as a model and how you find allure in creative projects.
I think for me, I think I mentioned before about connecting with the pieces that I'm wearing. So whether it's like a fitting that same week before, and talking to people about what they really see. But then when you get on set, I think the allure for me, it's my connection with the photographer. Sometimes, and it sounds quite corny, but sometimes it really does feel like you're the only two people there. And there's this connection, and I describe it as kind of like a bit of fishing wire from me through this vision. And you just know when you feel it, but also that embodies like the trust and the creative I guess it's behind the shoot, but yeah, I mean,
You can feel that in that image.
Yeah, this image,
Yeah,
it was quite
so beautiful.
late, and we were shooting in a freezing cold pool in Ibiza.
The fact you can give that face, considering how cold it was.
It was really, really, really cold. Yeah, it was. My teeth were chattering, and it was like also then like dunking, and then having the makeup be wet, and then coming back up. And Harley, where I was shooting, and we were both in the water, and she had her goggles on, and we were just. But I just felt like it was me and her, and we could have been in the Caribbean Sea, but you feel it. So for me, I definitely, it's the photographer in that moment where everything comes to life for me.
I mean, when I'm thinking of a show, it always starts from the music that I'm listening to. So I think like something will come from the types of songs that I'm kind of like gravitating towards, and then I'll use that as a sort of visualization tool, and that just usually is the thing that sort of stays with me or helps me kind of anchor out kind of decks that I need to use to kind of build out what the show is alongside the collection. And then, you know, now that I make my own music, it's sort of different, because before I would kind of pick that song or a couple of songs that I was listening to and put it onto the runway, but now I have to kind of also like sort of translate that in a different way. Then you kind of have to sometimes let something pause and then just like cook and then just kind of be like just develop into something else. But I think music has always been the first thing that kind of gives me that element of allure, and it always will be, I think. So.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's basically when we start the collection, because I feel like we always start the collections with like an emotion, or like we're quite emotional in how we kind of start building the collection, whether with what's happening around us or how we feel about fashion or how we feel about our brand or whatever, you know. So usually there's a kind of emotion that will be guiding the whole season. So when we get to the show, it's just a continuation of that now we have to like formulate in terms of show and how we can get people to understand what we were thinking about. And then when it gets to the campaign, it's kind of like, again, the next step from that, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's a combination of so many different elements that creates that energy, or that we try to create the allure, like whether it's through the like location that you choose. Like last season we were like super happy with the location. It was like the old CSM building, and you just go in and you feel the energy already. So part of the work is like kind of already done, because you found like such a fab space.
Is that Southampton Row?
Yeah,
near Holborn.
Yeah,
it's such a good
it's so
building.
You really feel it when you're in
Yeah, I
there.
used
It
to
had
go
this cold. It
and
was
like the way the sound reverberated,
so
and then like, you know, it's how the girls move, like the hair and makeup,
yeah, the
like it's all
pillars
the like
around
little
that,
like details, you know. It's
I
like
didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
it's
Yeah, it
incredible.
was really
Oh, it was really good.
such a
Do we
nice
have
space.
any more questions from the audience?
Got a question from YouTube from Pedro, who asked, how can one have a consistent theme and create a build-up of storytelling, like across multiple campaigns?
I'm going to repeat the question because nobody's mic'd up. How can...
How can a consistent theme and create a build-up of storytelling, so I guess across...
A consistent theme in building storytelling.
I would say that sometimes comes in the edit. Like, I think that, you know, obviously you kind of have to let something just be what it needs to be. Sometimes, you know, some people are very controlled and they like to print out and see everything. Like when we did those photos with Tim, he was printing stuff out and cutting stuff out as it was happening. So then, you know, when it came to the edit, we actually didn't edit anything out. It was all ready there. But I do think that when we've done campaigns that are more just for online usage, it's very much about, okay, this is the theme of the photographer. This is the kind of art direction that we're planning to do. I think it's that edit, you know, kind of what doesn't fit right. I think that's for me.
Do you mean like over different campaigns, how
Over
we
the
can
seasons.
continue the same thematic but still build something new? Is that what they mean? I mean, I think it's just about finding what you believe in at the core, and then it just happens. You know, you can see that Charles, whatever he does, it's still Charles Jeffrey.
I think it's quite innate. I don't feel like it's something you have to necessarily, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it just happens quite naturally. And it's usually, like for us, it's definitely always focused around like the Knowles, like woman, and like just making sure that it makes sense and that it's her, and like
Certain
how is she
energy.
evolving over time, but still like
how is she
maintaining with her
growing?
core identity. I don't know.
You know what's so interesting is that, like, because you obviously, like, you've done lots of different types of collections, but like the women still stays so similar. You know, like it's you can really read that even like minus the clothes. It's quite interesting. Like you've got such a good way of capturing that, because your collections have evolved so much. But it's like the women is still so strong.
I mean, same to you. you know, not to pat each other on the back, but I think no, but it's
See each other enough, you know, it's the point. I think more
it's true.
designers need to do it to
I
each
think
other.
it's a good example of like building the world. Is like really understanding at a core who you're trying to dress, who, like, what kind of music they listen to, what kind of thing you're trying to like make them fantasize about, what's the world that these people would want to live in, and then build around this, you know, different perspective in that world, you know. So I think that's the goal.
So one question over there.
Yeah?
Hi. Thanks for creating so much inspiring visual for the fashion. And I believe those visuals have become a lot of case study for brands on the social media. And so they can, because the AI is developing, and so some, like, because my friend's doing that, and some brands, they started using AI and to use your visual, perhaps other photographers' visual too, as a template, so they can quickly generate lots of feeds to feed their social media. So I'm curious, so what's your opinion on the AI, and how do you see the opportunity to collaborate with AI to keep leading the visual for fashion?
Yeah. What are our thoughts on AI, generative AI?
I love a bit of AI. I
Yeah,
do. I love a
me
bit of
too.
AI. I love a bit of ChatGPT. But I think we're all kind of feeling a similar way collectively as the human race in relation to it. It's the first time that robots coming to get us is kind of actually like coming to life, and I think we've got that caution. You know, I was with a student yesterday who it's funny that we actually have this talk because it's a visual identities project. It's one that me and Hetty do together actually, but they are generating images on AI, and some of them are really beautiful, but he's doing it with a lot of care, and so you can tell that like there's this narrative that's going through in the way that the prompts, so there is an artwork in that. But I was saying that it's so important, I think, that as humans interacting with our images, you need to balance that with images that are kind of very human-made, that are also kind of like showing the person behind it. I think we're also going through this weird age now where there is a kind of rejection of that. Like everyone is so frustrated. In some ways, as horrible and as atrocious as it is, this right-wing populism that's happening, and the control of social media, I actually think that people will start to understand how bad it is for us. I mean, I know this has been this for years, but I wonder if there will be a rejection of it, if there will be a kind of cult of young people that will just be like, this is really bad for me, and I know it's like addictive, like sugar, you know, it's like, it's
so
not
much about an image as well, which I feel like we've all kind of said during this panel, was like, do I believe you? Do I see the Knowles woman? Do I believe you? Do I look at that image? And I wonder if AI can bring that same
human connection.
Yes, and I don't know. I think that rejection will come because what we were saying at the beginning of this talk about imagery and feeling so connected to like a tear out from a magazine, and will we still be able to connect to that in the same way, and then will in turn that be rejection? Yeah. But I think like anything new that comes on, the industry will work with it and see, and it will settle. It will find a way to.
That's the thing. I think it's just going to become. I mean, I do like a bit of AI as well. You know, I've been trying to like convince Jamie to do an AI project for a while, and we're working on something at the moment with AI. But I think, like you said, if you remove the human, you remove the connection, and I think it's probably going to become something more like a computer. You know, if you tell someone in the 70s that we would have these personal computers, that we would send email to each other all the time instead of like letters, people would have been. That's not possible. Like, how are we going to work? How is the world going to function? And I'm sure the same is going to happen with AI. It's going to get to a point where there's going to be regulation put on it, and people will have to like, you know, probably pay other people for using their material as like content for training the AI, and then it's just going to become something that we use as part of photography to like amplify it and do things that, you know, breaks the barriers of fantasy and reality even more. I mean, I'm being hopeful.
I would say
I'm also terrified.
No, but I think it's important to know what's going on, because like what I would hate to be is someone like in 10 years from now, and I've been like, I reject the phone,
it and then not utilising it.
And then someone crank call or like AI calls me or something, and then I like hand my money over.
Yeah,
like it's my mom. It's like my niece or nephew. I mean, I don't know. Like make up. So I think you have to know what's going on. Like I think even though stuff is so like you know, it's quickly becoming so realistic, you know, more and more so. But I think you can still tell. I think you have to look at the fingers, even the fingers. But then it's
They're always a bit like
there's one that just kind of goes like that. You know?
AI fashion models, yay or nay?
I mean, obviously, nay.
Nay.
It depends on what I think it depends on what the project is. I think if it's like a hand in a bag and you're just selling bags, then I just think, I mean, I don't know, like there is hand models that exist in the world that, like, I remember the documentary where the woman was always moisturizing her hands.
They were like special gloves. I'm like so intrigued by hand models. It's such an amazing job. It really is. But again, those people, that hand is going to give you more than the other one.
Yeah.
It depends on the project, I think.
I think there's like a huge need for like young, like, so we had the MA fashion show just happen recently, like, and there's all these new kids who are like suddenly having to be propelled to be on the same level, you know, because they're in the same kind of Instagram as all of these other brands. Like, you know, they could potentially, like, you know, jump over some bridges by using some AI tools to kind of like have a certain standard of image, like off bags or of things, you know, rather than having to pay photographers because they don't have any money, you know, like, so there could be some tools. So I think there's always ways around it, but I think when it comes to taking jobs from people and then losing that connection,
that's the main negative side of it, is like the potential of, lots of jobs being not needed, or like, you know, because it's a cheaper option, or like, you know, that is that is quite worrying.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
We have time for one more question, if there are any. Yeah?
In the early stages of your building the brand, building your career, I'm assuming you had less connections, less amount of crew, less assistants around. Perhaps you didn't know exactly where the brand is going to go in terms of the style, in terms of the brand world building. What techniques and types of approach have stayed on with you that you still use, that you don't really have to use anymore? They become like an inherent part of your brands.
So what techniques did you start off with that you've carried with you throughout this whole process and will continue to do, even now that you have maybe more resources than when you started?
Or to save money? Or like in what sense? To like create imagery?
It can be to do with creative process, world building, production, anything, but it would be interesting to know specific examples.
Humor, always, for me, and I think kind of having a connection with the subjects that I'm working with. I think, you know, the early Loverboy campaigns that we used to do, even just for the club nights, you know, it was always just my friends, and we would just use, you know, create some sort of editorial, but then we were always kind of posing and pretending we were like Kate Moss and Naomi Campbell, but it was just like people from FCP getting together. And I just think there's something in that kind of humor, but then there's also that idea of like still projecting out where you want to go. You know, I'm like, I guess, a medium-sized brand now, and I still want to be like a big brand. I want to be here for 50 years. So there's this idea of like kind of faking it till you make it as well, but in a way that's kind of just open and authentic. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure the industry, like I said, is definitely like high school. You know, the more people you can meet, the more people you can have wanting to participate in your world without having to necessarily like put money in the beginning is always really helpful. You know, we were really lucky that we had a brand that was kind of interesting for people, so they wanted to work with us. But, you know, in the beginning, I feel like,
yeah, we couldn't have done any of it if people hadn't been so like collaborative and just up for creating stuff together.
It's really, like Charles said, it's really to meet a crew that's going to be able to like support you from different ways. You know, we met Georgia really early on, and she was, you know, already established as a stylist, but she really saw something that she believed in, and she was like, I'm not doing any brands, so I really want to like work with you guys. And we were like, cool. And we didn't really realize how much it would bring to have someone who had the experience of, you know, doing shoots every day. And like, she's also a workaholic, so she does hundreds of shoots a year. So she's really good at like pumping out like ideas and like coming up with things. So, you know, it really taught us how to like think about things, how to build like a deck for like a pitch and like all of these things. And then, you know, we worked with like Thomas on makeup, and just seeing his way of working with makeup. You know, the more people that you meet outside of your brand that believes in the same thing as you and kind of are able to bring them close to you, the more you're going to be able to like learn and benefit from it as well.
What about you, Alva?
I think it's what you were saying about the connections early on in your career, but I reckon being kind and not knowing.
Yeah.
I've always gone in with warmth to whatever I'm doing, but also not making assumptions about who's on set, who's shooting. No matter, you can still create something amazing even if it isn't big names. And I think when you first start out, like, I don't know, like the first runway I walked was on This Morning, you know, like that, like that kind of. Yeah. But like, I was still walked into it as a serious like opportunity and job. So like having that like sincerity, kindness in the beginning, and then keeping that no matter what you do is so important, or who you meet. So
that's true. Like authenticity and being nice to people, you know.
You
Also
just
having
don't
an
know.
amazing team.
In our team, I think,
Shout out
you
to
know.
our team.
So like I think just like niceness and the people you meet, and if you're nice, they're going to be nice to you. You know, there's some people that are not nice in this industry, and there's some people that are very nice, and the nice people get together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They do.
What an amazing way to end our incredible conversation. Thank you all for joining us in Show Studio today for our panel discussion. And for everyone at home, make sure you head to showstudio.com for all of our coverage on London Fashion Week. Bye.